Hello, and welcome to Living Spark, a project of the Spark of Humanity Network. I'm your host, Danielle O'Hallisey, and today we'll be doing what we do with these sessions, which is to talk a little bit about the Spark of Humanity philosophy, experience, and to listen and watch me stumble my way through the process of trying to learn and grow in and through this practice. And my cat Momo likes to join me, and you'll be meeting her when she leaps up onto my lap at some point. The statement of principle, that's my own choice of how I express it. The statement of principle here on the Spark of Humanity Network begins with the paragraph, the insight that there is a spark of humanity in everyone is the foundation of the Spark of Humanity Network. We have discovered that as we connect with and affirm the spark in others, we are claiming our personal spark and becoming agents of transformation. That's very lofty, and I want to break it down a little bit, talk about it a little bit. But more importantly, I think today we're going to talk a little bit about as we find that it seems that the strength and spark acts to erode the defenses, release the distortions, and clarify the bafflement. That's a main focus in what I'm doing here. Is I speak about my own bafflement, my own confusion, and my own process of working through some of the barriers inside of myself. Now, an important part of what I do with this program is to, each time I assign myself a homework assignment, that over a period of time, I'm going to focus on a particular thing that is often one of those bafflements. Or you could say I'm focusing on for want of a better name, a virtue that will contradict and perhaps be a cure for that bafflement. The last time we met was 4 weeks ago, not 2. And that's because I had something come up which prevented my being here 2 weeks ago. And appropriately enough, given that it was a longer period of time between sessions, appropriately enough, the topic was patience. I took some time and talked about something that will lead us into today's topic in a little bit. So rather than revisiting that at the moment, I will get to that. I'm going to begin by talking a little bit more about patience and a little bit more about my own experience with patience versus impatience. I think it's always with these things, it's always beneficial to talk a little bit about what was my foundational experience with the topic of patience. And what comes to mind immediately is my mother scolding me, be patient, when is Christmas going to arrive? When is when is the cake going to be done? When is my birthday? When will I know this? When will I do this? And that kind of gentle scolding that a mother does. Be patient. Of course, then when you encounter the topic as an adult, you begin to come up against that distortion, bafflement, that barrier, that obstruction inside of ourselves that says, I don't want to be patient. I don't want to be scolded. We think of it as in the terms of being scolded, and therefore we are confronted by our own resistance to something that, again, I don't love the word virtue just because it has baggage from this is sort of, I was trying to explain this to someone yesterday, and I said it's not quite secular spirituality, although I like that term, because we think of spirituality and religion as being inherently interwoven. I guess a better way to say it would be this is a spirituality that is not affiliated with a religion. Therefore, we hope to avoid dogma. We hope to avoid any of the baggage of people's interactions. I don't want to say that religion has baggage. It's that our experience with it brings baggage to the table. So we try to avoid any kind of dogma. We try to avoid any kind of shoulds. You must do this. You should do that. You should believe this. You should do that. All right. So patience, virtue, good stuff. Let's call it. I have a little bit of a story after that foundational experience with the word patience, with the idea of being patient, about my own journey to take hold of something that I will call my patience, while acknowledging that my patience is very limited. I began to attend the teachings at a Buddhist monastery several years ago. It's now 3 years ago. I have mentioned health issues on this program before. I had just had my 5th heart attack, and I was unfortunately just about to have my 6th. When I first set foot in a Buddhist temple, I had watched some of their teachings streamed online, had watched the YouTube version, so it was edited, and I could skip around in it, which is okay. But yeah, after that 5th heart attack, it finally became aware to me. It came to my awareness that what I was doing wasn't working, and I didn't know what to do otherwise. But I thought, these guys will know. At the same time, I was sure that I was going to walk in and be like instantly a great student and absorb all this stuff like immediately. Yeah, right. And so I went in, and they were reading from a text called Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. I'm saying that only as context. If you don't know what a bodhisattva is, I barely know at this point, and invite you to look up that text. It's available. Translations in any language are available online, free of cost, PDF, or you can buy a book. This isn't about that, and it's not my attempt to teach something that I barely understand. It's my experience with these Buddhist monks and the teacher in the monastery, who is nearly 90 years old, left Tibet in the late 50s, 1959, along with the Dalai Lama and other teachers. And that text has a chapter that they were focused on. And I went in and listened to the teachings, and they were talking about anger. We're talking a lot about anger. And it's a sort of practical, logical way of breaking down our anger, of talking about things like being angry at inanimate objects. And believe me, I've worked at a computer for the last, it's been my place of work for 30 years, 35 years. I spent a lot of time with the inanimate object before which I am seated, a computer, the camera attached to it, the keyboard, the mouse, all that stuff. And so when he started talking about, one entire teaching was about how illogical it is to be angry at an inanimate object, my reasoning mind can immediately say, sure, that's true, but at the same time, I get mad at computers all the time. This morning, trying to get my computer started and logged in, and when I'm streaming over Zoom, and then Orca Media records that, and it's put up on YouTube, streaming live to people in their homes right now, if they're choosing to tune in. Of course, my computer wasn't behaving itself. My camera wasn't operating, which has the microphone in it, which wasn't operating. Of Of course I got angry, like, but hopefully a little less angry than I used to. Anyway, the teaching went on for quite a long time. The teachings went on talking about our anger toward those who have disappointed us, talking about anger in different situations, talking about it went on for 9 months. 9 months. Somehow it was almost obstinate thinking on my part. I'm going to show up every week and I'm going to listen and I'm going to try to analyze what I'm being taught and I'm going to try to absorb it. So listening to teachings about anger toward teachers that we've had who have let us down, anger toward loved ones, friends, family, and each of them being that breaking down through logic of the futility of, let's just say the futility of most of the anger, but in the context of the teachings, it was the futility of all of it. How rarely our anger brings us to any point of actually making change in the world. And how often on those rare occasions that we do have, that we do make a change based on our anger, how rare it is that that change abides, how that it continues to outlive the moment, and make lasting change or make anyone's life lastingly better. I'm thinking of my mother, be patient. Gentle scolding of a mother, but that kind of thing, like be patient and, sure, in the backseat of the car, when are we going to get there? When are we, when are we? The kind of anger exhibited that is gentle but caused momentary change did not result in my becoming patient. Anger. I tipped my hand there. Anger in the context of that chapter, the constant addressing of our anger and our invitation to alter that was due to its being an obstacle to patience. And the chapter itself was about patience. 9 months I listened, and every week as they talked about teachers that we feel let us down, or that they didn't teach us well enough, or didn't teach us the right things, or inanimate objects that we waste our time being angry at, or the fact that when we do make a change through anger, it is, in my life, it's always been a momentary change. 9 months. The teacher speaking in Tibetan, the interpreter interpreting the words for an hour and a half. For an hour and a half. And then a question and answer session for a half hour. We ask questions, they go to the translator who translates them. That comes back. We hear it, and what if we feel like, you didn't represent our question well enough, the answer isn't adequate. Well, we can then go through that process again. The guy in his late 80s speaking to the interpreter, coming back to us. And lessons in patience. Now, I said I'd come back to where I began 4 weeks ago with this reflection on patience. And I had talked about my own struggles with everyone in this culture. We struggle with weight, or nearly everyone. And how my struggles became irrelevant because they had always been about being young and being attractive or whatever. And suddenly it became 6 heart attacks later, time to take it seriously. And I began to look at the fact that I had lost the same 5 pounds dozens of times, and of course put it back on. how my goals were always to lose 5 pounds, lose 10 pounds, that was framed in a framing of it, of how I appear in the world. But suddenly it was like I had a near-death experience, heart attack number 4. And since then, 5 and 6 happened. And suddenly it became like, I want to stay alive a while longer. And about 8 months into that 9-month-long chapter about patience, something came to mind that said, I have a habit. I have a habit of addressing this through the lens of my vanity and my impatience. And I'd seen all the cycles that had to do with weight loss. I'd seen them over and over. I lose the weight, I gain it back. I lose the weight, I gain it back. I had seen that I lose the weight, I lose a little more, I do a little better, but I haven't adjusted to my body being different. And that lack of adjustment, somehow I would feel uncomfortable in a body that was a little bit less heavy. And the motivation was different. That's what worked for me. That's why this worked for me. I gave myself an ongoing lecture or speech about, you're going to lose 5 more pounds. You are then going to have to struggle to keep it off, and you're going to feel like a failure because you're not losing more, and you're going to start gaining it back. And the ongoing discussion with myself of, you must acclimate, you must create a habit of new behavior, even after it's worked a little bit for you, even after you've met a goal. You're going to have to acclimate to it, hold at the new conditions, the new, like, I am eating differently. I'm not dieting, I am eating differently. It has worked a little bit. I'm going to hold to that. I'm going to acclimate to it. I'm going to get accustomed to thinking of things in a new way. And that means I'm going to claim a habit. This doesn't directly speak to Spark of Humanity. I apologize for that. But I don't really apologize for it, because we have obstacles in ourselves that prevent our opening and affirming and recognizing and growing in our humanity. Impatience, anger, a relationship there. Impatience is probably caused by a lot of other things. Now we have this little device we carry around in our hands. We want to learn something. We go click. Hey, I don't know it yet. The website hasn't loaded. The video hasn't. Oh, the video is 5 minutes long. How am I going to? Yeah, it feeds on its own self. Impatience does, as does anger. But I would say that the contradicting force is the force of gently changing over time our habits of mind. And I've got a lot of support in that. Again, with the Buddhists, there's a whole book I'm reading right now called 8 Steps to Happiness. And they're not talking about how to get the job you want, how to get the girl you want, how to get the... It's not about acquisition. It's about patiently, gradually changing our habits. A little story about that, and I know we're running fairly low on time here, but an interesting story about it. Some of you who are seeing this from Montpelier will maybe know this story. I'm not going to name the person to whom it happened. It isn't my story, so I'm not going to do that and expose someone else's experience. But I've heard when I tell people that I spend time with Buddhists, they immediately say, well, you can't possibly believe in reincarnation. That makes no sense. So that becomes an obstacle, and I try not to discuss it with people. I try to talk about compassion, patience, peace. Those are the places that I try to steer the conversation. But I know someone who experienced years ago this thing of, I can't remember the full name of it, but it's 2 important words: transitory amnesia. where apparently he woke up and didn't know who he was, and didn't know a lot of things about life. And a friend happened to drop in and recognize this, and stayed with him for several days as he worked through it. And eventually it just lifted. It's an odd thing. It's very rare. When I've looked it up, it appears that some psychologists claim that it doesn't exist. I trust the person to whom it happened, who told me about his experience. At any rate, he was able to feed himself, tie his shoes, walk, speak the language, speak English, and understand words being said to him. So he hadn't lost everything. This is not what reincarnation is, by the way. But it explains a little bit what Buddhists claim that reincarnation is. He maintained the habits of mind. He was a very good, honest, nice person. He didn't suddenly become a monster. He didn't suddenly start taking advantage of others. He was, in many ways that we would honor and respect and recognize, the same person. He just didn't know who he was. He didn't know where he worked, certain details about his life that he had lost. I would say, and again, Buddhists would say that going through the amnesia that is death and rebirth, that on the other side of it is what survives are our habits. Now, the stories diverge. His story shows us that some knowledge, in his experience at least, stayed with him. But the habits, those are the things that we seem to carry with us, that stay with us, that stay alive. I'm going to suggest trying to come full circle here with very little time left now. That when we encounter obstacles in others, in our external life, in the interactions that we have with others, it is not, for most of us, our habit to say, I must recognize their humanity. And the Spark of Humanity meditation that is found on the website sparkofhumanity.net. You go to attic, then you go to meditations. It's a little bit of poking around, but that the Martha, who recorded those at Orca Media, speaks of our getting beyond. We're not conceptualizing anymore. We're not trying to imagine or visualize that we have a spark and that the other person has a spark. We're literally at some point connecting. We're literally finding this place, our humanity. We're no longer trying to imagine. We're not trying to fantasize it, visualize it. We are literally connecting to it. And to come back to the topic of the week, which is habit, it is not normally my habit to do so. When I encounter a difficult person, my habit is to judge them and distance myself from them. And over the past several sessions, I've talked about how it's my habit to do that with lovely people too. I don't habitually look for my own spark of humanity and look for that of the other that I'm engaging with. I'm going to spend the next 2 weeks looking to alter my habit. And that will mean that every time I encounter a person, for now, a person that I feel safe doing this with, I'm not going to say it out loud. I'm going to ask myself to find my spark of humanity and connect with it through connecting with theirs, to discover a place of reinforcement of that spark. We're out of time. Thank you for joining me. And please join us again. Thank you.